can't.
2 points to make. I make actually. You notice all the people that are here, all the performers that are here right now. There's well over 38 of us here. Why only 38 spots? Why don't you make more spots to accommodate some of the performers that are not going to be able to get out there?
Let me take all your comments, but I will specifically address that issue.
That's one thing that really bothers me. That's only
I understand, and I would bother me
Okay,
too. But let me address that when you're done, and I'll put that down.
Another thing that you had mentioned earlier about the performers that have painted faces. I'm a Gene Simmons lookalike. I had an incident, you described an incident where a guy had to use a taser to get a tip from somebody. Mm-hmm. Okay, there was an incident with me, basically the same thing, except I wasn't going after a tip. Some drunken idiot came up, pushed me, and said, F you. Mm-hmm. So I looked back, I don't know, F you. You know, if somebody's going to do me, I'm going to do the same thing back to him. And then he started coming after me. He pushed me first, you know, which really ticked me off. And he started coming after me, and his buddies were trying to hold him back. He was just drunk, wanting to fight. And I told his buddies, hold him back or he's going to be sorry. Mm-hmm. And I told him about 25 times. He kept coming at me. He hit me 3 times. The 3rd time, I said, to hell with it. Took my zapper and zapped him right in the chest. It stopped him instantly. And the only reason I did that was because he actually hit me 3 times before I actually got aggressive and went after him. And it wasn't because of a tip or anything like that. I just want to make sure that you know what happened. And I heard through the grapevine, there was one guy that filmed the whole thing. And the only thing that you guys saw here in the council, I believe they showed it, was me reaching out and zapping the guy. Which basically said that the characters are getting aggressive out there and zapping people with their thing. That's not what happened. He was coming after me. And my partner is here right now that was there that could confirm that whole thing because he stood there and watched it.
Thank you.
One other thing about the circles on that and coming down and having to register, it takes me 3.5 hours to put my makeup on and get my costume ready and get down there. If I don't get down there in time to register, all that time putting the makeup and everything on is wasted for the night. I got to go down. I can go down to the strip, but now because of your rule, there are going to be more people going down to the strip and taking the spots there, which are good, and it's just going to cause a whole major hassle.
Understood.
Thank you.
And let me say this also. This is televised. You'll catch it in a minute.
Did I say something I shouldn't?
That's okay. You're fine.
I'm sorry.
You're fine. You're fine.
Hello,
Please,
everyone. My name's Frank. I'm a street performer. I have a high-energy interactive breakdance show. My main concern are the 6-foot circles in radius. I don't think it's enough because I breakdance, you know, arms extended out past 6 feet, and I have 3 other people. They're in my crew as well, and I would have at least 200 people around my show. So that's my main concern.
Jerry Lechner, street performer and licensed as a business and tax paying under the municipalities of City of Las Vegas, Secretary of State, and Nevada tax registration. Currently, it seems like in the past, there's already been some problems with arbitrary enforcement. Showgirls, pasty girls, big cleavage, trumps superheroes or cartoons anytime. And there's been arbitrary enforcement by the FSE. Let's say there's been many questions by cartoons or superheroes. We're not out of bounds. Oh, you're 1 foot out of bounds. Can you push over? What about those large cleavage ladies over there? Oh, okay, we'll talk to them later. Well, about 45 minutes later, nobody has talked to them. So apart from the obvious analogy that somehow these are virtual cages and street performers are becoming the caged humans in a movie called Planet of the Apes, there's also a reason why the movie series Paul Blart Mall Cop has been so entertaining because it's somewhat founded on real statistics as well. Us street performers have seen many of the FSC first week or second week security officers that not only act like they just passed the police academy test and become overzealous in their arbitrary interpretation of the laws, but now when you have 27 circles, how are you going to prevent from certain factions of 6 or 8 people that know each other signing up one each, taking up about a third of the circles available? You can always prove an occurrence. If something happens in a performance circle, you know who to make responsible. You cannot prove a non-occurrence. So if 4 people, or let's say 7 people sign up for 7 circles, but then magically are not there, just to monopolize the areas and the lack of conflicting with each other and monopolizing the earnings, that seems very difficult to monitor.
I'm Josh Race. I do Michael Myers on Fremont. One big issue I want to address is the 2-hour thing. I know some of us walk around. If you do the spots, are you going to make the people walking around stop? Because it's going to, for me, that's how I make my money. You know, I know some of these people make money, you know, for a living. I do it for food in the house and a roof over my head. If you change everyone 2 hours, do you think that's going to make a riot? Because you're going to have people fighting over, you know, registered people, you know, fighting for one circle. And that, to me, that's going to cause a riot. Also, you know, I know some people stand around at one spot, certain spot, because that's where they make their money. So if you move them, they're going to lose money. And that's my biggest thing. And if I move around for 2 hours and I can't walk around, I may not be able to pay rent, and I might be on the streets again. So I just want to let you guys know. Thank you.
One of the things that I'm concerned is that when I do shows, I've been in Fremont Street already for quite a long time, and in all the years that I've been there, I've been working only in 2 places for one reason: respecting the rules of Fremont Street. So I'm trying to keep away from the stores. The problem is that when I do shows, I make big crowds. My crowds are big. And that is one of the reasons why I don't move that much. So in all the years of being working on Fremont, I'm always in the same place, just because I don't want to bother all the stores next to me because the crowd's getting so big. So that's one thing that I'm concerned about it. So.
Before we go to the next speaker, let me just tell you that I have here parking permits that give you free parking for 2 hours. I know some people have decided to leave early. I'll give them to Councilman Barlow. If anybody does leave early and you want to take advantage of the free parking, we'll have the permits over here. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
That's okay. My name is Angelina Ayala. I'm from Buffalo, New York. I'm a tourist. And for the past month and a half, I've actually gone down to Fremont Experience. And I can say, as a tourist, I have seen a lot of these people perform and have respect and try to follow the rules. But one thing that, as a tourist, it just, you know, kind of scares me, like last night. I had a homeless person who was panhandling, and because I said no, tried taking my wedding band, which is a 6.2 carat ring, and it actually was a performer who actually got involved. But when I look at these people, they became my family. I go every night because I enjoy the way they are professional, the way they perform, they respect the tourists. And the city council, by putting these little circles, I've been done a lot of traveling. I've seen street performers. It would cause a chaos for some of these people. And these people here, they're out there to make money and also respect tourists like me. So I'm asking that the council have consideration for us tourists. We enjoy these people on Fremont Experience. Don't change things where they're not able to make their money and support themselves and their families. I'd rather see that the council work on the people that are out there panhandling and looking for items to steal from us tourists like me. That's something that the police department and the city council needs to address, is the panhandlers and the homeless people that are out there causing problems, not these young people that are trying to make money to support their families. That's all I need to say as a tourist. Thank you.
Hello, we're the Pirates of Fremont Street. This is my wife. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you today. I will be as brief as possible and to the point. Let's start with the time, place, and manner restrictions proposed under this new ordinance. Now, this comes from the Constitution. All time, place, manner restrictions are to do with the First Amendment, must provide speakers with alternative channels for communicating ideas or disseminating information. Unlike millionaire moguls and corporate giants, the average person on the street does not commonly communicate through the mass media. Most people do not hold press conferences, and if they did, few members of the media would attend. Instead, the great bulk of communication takes place through the circulation of leaflets, handbills, pamphlets, and other First Amendment activities, which people can see, distribute, and read in a cheap and efficient manner. As a result, courts are generally sensitive to protecting these modes of communication, and TPM restrictions limiting distribution and First Amendment practices usually founder. TPM restrictions are tested in this manner. Number one, they must be content neutral. Number two, must be narrowly tailored. Number three, to further a significant government interest. Number four, must leave alternative channels of communication. With this being said, whether it be 5 minutes, 2 hours, or 1 week, any pause or suspension of my First Amendment rights is just that, a suspension of my constitutional rights. So while a performance zone is constitutional, and moving performance zones every 2 hours is constitutional, any suspension of my First Amendment rights is not constitutional. For example, if after performing for 2 hours in a performance zone, I go to move into another zone but cannot because all zones are occupied, I would then ask an official for an alternative channel to practice my First Amendment right. If an alternative channel cannot be provided, for example, my wife and I would then cease to follow this ordinance and practice our First Amendment rights outside of a performance zone. However, under the new proposed ordinance, we would be charged with a misdemeanor, which is in fact a forced suspension of constitutional rights under threat of law. Any suspension of constitutional rights is unconstitutional, and only the President of the United States may suspend my rights under the Constitution in a time of martial law or national disaster. My wife and I will follow this ordinance until the time we have no performance zone to stand in. My question is, why a new ordinance? Every law needed to rid Fremont of the illegal and distasteful behavior is already in existence and on the books. It just conveniently has not been enforced. If it had, we simply would not be in this situation. The illegal and distasteful behavior has been recorded, reported, and ignored. As for the issue of street performers damaging Fremont revenue, my wife and I have been featured in many publications, domestic and internationally. We are well-rounded in TV, stage, and are listed on several travel websites from France, Canada, and Latin nations as a must-see on Fremont. Hypothetically, if we discourage these tour groups from Fremont, then it conclusively could be said that we have negatively impacted revenue for Fremont. Until then, it is a fact that we have done nothing but encourage revenue for Fremont. We work hard. We hand-make 100% of our historical outfits, not costumes, and put 100% into what we do. Street performance dates back to antiquity. And alongside, theater is the oldest form of entertainment. In fact, Benjamin Franklin was a practicing street performer, and we are very proud to be members of a long history of proud, renowned street performers. For example, Mozart Amadeus. Instead, we are continuously slandered and treated like second-class citizens on Fremont. We are not even allowed the basic human right to use the restroom. Hypothetically speaking, if this ordinance became unconstitutional and we had no place to stand, and every or a majority of street performers refused to stand in a performance zone on the basis that there were not enough performance zones, is it realistic that Metro would waste the time, money, and manpower to arrest every street performer on Fremont and ignore real threats and significant problems otherwise happening in the city? Now, all that being said, there is one quote that I would like to adopt from City Council. And I would like I'd highly suggest my fellow street performers to take heed to this. No taste, no talent, no tip. That's it.
And I just have a very small thing to add. I am Renee. I am his wife. I am the person that creates these costumes for us. We stand, thank you, united on all fronts. Well, actually, historically speaking, if you use the word costume, that's what they used to call their wardrobe. Anyhow, we've been out there 7 years. We've seen good, bad, really ugly, really ugly, really fun, really funny. There does need to be some form of a commitment from Fremont Street Experience, Metro, street performers, the casinos, and City Council to all band together to make it a positive thing, because potentially it looks like it's going to create a lot of problems. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Zenon Sky. I've been doing this 5 years. Primarily, I've been one of the KISS guys, mostly Paul Stanley. And from the day I first started, I always thought, even before there were ordinances, all right, I'm gonna do basic things. I'm not gonna go ahead and, steal the thunder of the bands that are playing, or go inside a casino and take pictures for tips, or do any of these things that a lot of street performers have done, unfortunately, that have brought upon these problems to have these ordinances created in the first place. I was looked at as a privilege to do that. I have to address three things. Number one, I find it curious that, from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m., that's not divisible by 2. So there's going to be a 3-hour thing there somewhere. Secondly, sometimes I work solo, sometimes as a duo, a trio, 4 people. If you have 6 feet, all right, conceivably 4 KISS guys could stand in 6 feet, but are people going to micromanage, oh, you're a half an inch over or something like that? That to me is kind of preposterous. And to piggyback on what my old partner Gary Down said earlier, first off, it was not a taser. Tasers, to my knowledge, are not legal to be carried by citizens. We had stun guns. And the reason why we had those in the first place is because I first started on the Strip, and within a week there was a Michael Jackson guy who actually no longer street performs. He's in a show in different places. And he was hassled so much that he said, I went and got one of these. And, looked at the legal right to have it, and so I went ahead and got one too, and I encouraged a few street performers to have it too for safety's sake. So we were well within our rights to use that. I had mine on me. That video is available on YouTube, and certainly it was just to defend ourselves. So thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Heather Baresi. I'm a street performer down in Fremont. I'm a hot air balloon that makes balloon animals for kids. I just have a few concerns with the new regulation. When I get into my costume, I get into my costume at the beginning of the night, and I'm on. I'm performing for the rest of the night. I have a hot air balloon costume that blinks. Everybody's seeing me from the moment I walk onto Fremont Street, and I am just one after another, kids, the whole night. So the 2-hour rule would be very bad for me, not only because I would probably be arrested, because 50% of my night would be turning down children because I have to stand in a staging area for 2 hours. So I'm there in my blinking costume There's children all around me, and I have to tell them, no, you can't have a balloon. I have to get into this circle. Literally, that ruins my right to perform. I don't feel good about performing anymore because I have to turn down children 50% of my night. I feel like that's not fair. And how are you guys going to stop kids from coming up to me and, demanding balloons? Another problem I have with the spots is the spot I've chosen on Fremont Street is for safety. I have been violently attacked on Fremont Street down by the Whiskey Liquor Bar at Binion's. I am terrified to stand at that end of Fremont Street. I was attacked by a group of people, several of which continued to beat on me. Nobody stopped it. There was no security. There was no police. There was only people wanted to tape it for the crowd. I had a black eye. It was terrifying. So now I am physically scared to stand at that side of Fremont. And who's going to guarantee my safety? Because before, when I would have bad people come up to me, I was able to simply leave the area and go to the other side of Fremont so they wouldn't be able to come back and physically hurt me over and over again during the night. Now that you guys are demanding that I stand in a 6-foot circle, I am basically on display for anyone to come back and hurt me. Are you guys going to take responsibility? Because now I can't stand. You've told me where I can stand, not where I can't. So now I feel like you guys have to take responsibility for my safety, saying that I have to perform. If I want to come out and use my First Amendment rights, I have to perform in a certain area that is detrimental to my safety. I basically perform for the joy of performance. I don't know, it seems like a lot of people act like we're out here to work. This is not a job. This is a performance. We will be tipped for what we do. This is for the love of what we do. I and many other people have jobs. If you require us to come down and sign up at a certain time, that means I have to take time out of my day. I can't go to work. I have to go up and sign up for these spots, and then I can't really perform how I want to perform. So all you'll be left with is homeless people that have nothing better to do than sit around and wait for a 2-hour spot. One more thing I wanted to say is, we can enforce the laws we already have. Everybody's talking on the internet like this bill is going to clean up Fremont. It's not going to do anything about what everybody on the internet's complaining about, which is the nudity and the classlessness. This law is not going to make that any better. Under-boob pasties are illegal in Las Vegas. As I read the law, anything under the nipple is illegal. They could just put a stop to all pasties if they wanted to with the laws they already have. To continue to regulate just causes more problems. Everyone's saying, this is going to clean up the streets, this is going to clean up the streets. They're not stopping anyone from performing, so there still will be naked people out there. And when there's a naked person standing next to me in the staging area, I can't give balloons to kids, because right now when naked people stand next to me, the people come over to me and say, can you come over here to perform for my children, because I don't want them to see these people. So now I can't walk 10 feet over and make a balloon for a child. Again, children are unhappy. Fremont's already not a place for children. I'm the only thing down there for children. Children really enjoy what I do. And you guys will just be hurting families and children down in Fremont when you do this. And it's going to push all the professionals to the strip. Because I'm not going to comply with these new rules. I'm simply going to go to the strip where you're allowed to perform how you want. And then all that's going to be left, again, are the people that are desperate and doing this for the wrong reasons.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gerald Morrison. I'm the Lost Baby in Las Vegas. A lot of people can't judge a book by its cover, but I've traveled the world. I've been in 16 different countries. I've seen a lot of places, including India, Bangladesh. I enjoy Las Vegas. I've been here for 3 years. I've been performing on Fremont. I'm also a property manager here in Las Vegas. I have 278 units that I manage here in Las Vegas. I go from California to Las Vegas to New York. I spend my time all over traveling, and on my spare time, I enjoy entertaining out on Fremont Street Experience. I have Been on TV for 16 years. I started when I was 6 years old on a kid show called The Cowboy Bob Show. I've done over 178 commercials. 1978, I did the very first macaroni and cheese commercial for Kraft. I have seen a lot of stuff on Fremont Street in the last 3 years that I've been here. You know, I have a sheriff's card. I've got a clean background. I've traveled the world. There's people out there on Fremont that hasn't had that privilege of life that I've had. You can't judge everybody, but there is some changes that need to be made at Fremont. But I think making the circles on Fremont and making people that are, you know, that are clean and no criminal background, making them suffer for a circle that they have to may stand in the high heat. We have people that are in the wheelchairs that could possibly have a heart attack or a heat stroke from being out in the heat. And if they get signed a circle out there, it's just going to be more trouble for the cosmetics, for the Metro. And I want to thank the Metro for serving their time out there on Fremont. Thank you guys so much for coming out there and watching over us. And, you know, I've been out there, and I'm amazed by the street performers that are out there because they don't drink on the job. They're not causing problems. There's a very few that does cause a problem, and the security and Metro is on them as soon as it happens. But I don't see a lot of fights out there, and I think the change that they're trying to call for isn't a good change. So please, if you guys want to come out and judge Fremont, come out and see the characters out there and see what we do out there. I don't make a lot of money, but I come to Vegas because maybe one day I'll get noticed. Thank you.
James Kelsey. I do a comedy magic show. It's mostly magic. I'm not very funny. That's beside the point. A good friend of mine over here mentioned something that was pretty important to me, which was I work with the large crowd, and I was very curious about what the rotation system specifically would look like, in that if I wait from 2 to 3 to have a choicey spot, a spot that works, that's empty, and I can have a large crowd in, and work from 3 to 5, and then want to continue to work, can I now go and wait in line for a spot that is also just as empty and wide for me to have a large crowd? Or do I now have to go to the next spot in the rotation that will require me to be in a smaller, more condensed area that will annoy Fremont with my large size crowds? That's something I'm very curious about, wondering about. The other thing was that I'm very curious about as well is how Metro specifically will be dealing with the very blurry line between a performer and a panhandler. For example, if I was doing my show in my spot as a performer, as the ordinance says, and another magician, not that any of the magicians on Fremont would do this, but another magician were to set up directly next to me and claim to be a panhandler and be accepting tips in the same way, what would Metro be able to do about it if the person were claiming to be a panhandler? Other than that, I am very willing to try out the system, but I do have some major concerns like that.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Ray. I'm not a street performer or really have anything to do with this. I just like going down to Fremont Street and having a fun time and watching other people have a fun time. I think that you guys have probably done your studies and realized that the street performers have increased the tourism over the years. I know that it's changed a little bit, but you know, this should be common sense. Why don't you just ask the tourists that is the most important thing? That's what brings money to Vegas, and go out there and do a secret survey. Ask the tourists, you want to have more street performers or less street performers? I think it's common sense that they like them, they pay them money. Of course they would like to have more street performers. This is going to not only cut that number down, but it will eventually take away from the tourism on Fremont Street. And the only other thing I have to say is that there's a lot of, when you're cutting down on these numbers, you're also cutting down on Vegas being the land of opportunity, because there's a lot of talent that I see starting out on Fremont Street, and the next thing you know, they got a show at the V, you know, they're in the V show at Planet Hollywood or something like that. So I just think that you ought to let these people do what they want to do and have free reign to do it. Thank you.
Please bear with me because I'm not the best reader in the world. I wrote you guys a little letter about how I feel about what's going on and things that might help, things that may not. To whom it may concern. I am Julie C. Langell. I have lived and been a professional dancer and entertainer in Las Vegas for the past 19 years. I've been in production shows on the Strip and surrounding areas. I have choreographed production shows. I've had my own show in Las Vegas. And I've also been a street performer for the past 6 years. I exercise my First Amendment right frequently with my friends. And we've all read and we understand the First Amendment right. And we fall within the First Amendment right. And we do what we do with some kind of integrity and a whole lot of fun. And I think that, well, basically, I'm not going to read what I have to say. I'll give you a copy of it. But basically what's happening is there are people that are doing business on the street. And while it is kind of lucrative to be doing business on the street, they aren't paying rent to be there. The kiosks are paying rent to be there. Cashman Photos has the photo rights on Fremont Street Experience, so you can't do a photo business on Fremont Street Experience. And once you're doing that, that's not lawful. And also them doing business doesn't fall within the First Amendment right. There's a majority of the people that are doing this, several companies outside doing this. And also within this, you know, there is obscene behavior and there is pornography going on Fremont Street Experience every day. And sometimes we have to move 2 or 3 times to stay away from that. So, I mean, it's a little difficult. I mean, personally, I don't like that, you know, and I'm not the government or anything else, you know, but I do have a valid concern about that. I do honestly and wholeheartedly think it makes the street look bad. And, you know, I have to be honest, and that's honest. I'm so shaky because I'm so embarrassed. I don't shake like this when I entertain. The last part is my question, and my question is, are the majority of the people and their bosses going to be able to continue, quote unquote, working under the new ordinances if they are passed on Fremont Street? Because I don't know that that's fair to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Hello, my name is Marin Hauser. About 10 years ago, I started being a street performer in Los Angeles, Santa Monica, Venice Beach, as well as Hollywood Boulevard. That eventually brought me to Las Vegas about, roughly about 6 years ago. I started working downtown, not working, excuse me, pardon the expression. I started working here in Vegas, but practicing my First Amendment right, exercising that downtown, about just over 6 years ago. I was one of the first of several characters that were out on the street, and there was a professional environment. There was, you know, about maybe 1/10 of what's out there now, which is, you know, I would like to add that Las Vegas is the entertainment capital of the world, and you know, we actually had some pride back then, and we actually had some talent. And we actually were there exercising that, and it was a great avenue for us to network and actually get other jobs in this city and get involved in other things that actually pay money and, you know, are actually legitimate outside of exercising our First Amendment right. And I'd also like to add that we've never, I say we as in myself and a couple others I used to work with, and some I work with now, like the last gal that was up there, Julie. We give away pictures for free. When people ask if they want a photo, they don't have no money, we say it's okay, because legally, your First Amendment right says that you must carry out your act or performance regardless if you're going to get tipped or not. So if you're unaware of that, you know, also pictures lead to pictures. Think about it. That's basically all I'd like to say. Thank you very much. Can do it. Yeah, right?
Thank you. There's, as union president and general counsel and representing majority of the workers on Fremont Street in the Strip, I have to be very diplomatic, even when I want to get angry at some words from Councilman Bob Cox. I mean, Cox, Coffin. I'm sorry, there was a Bob Cox in another city that was a councilman I used to live in. One of the big problems here is it's money and control. Some of this money and control comes not from you, not from Fremont Street, but the casinos who want to own the sidewalks, and they can't in this country. And they're trying to exert control and pressure, and I've dealt with this in court things before in Clark County, where they assume control of the sidewalk. They can't do that. That's a public place, quasi-public. The prune yard decision is almost ignored in this valley, which allows us to be there, among other things. Now, the biggest problem is I've identified 13 steps that define a multi-employer control of these performers. Dangerously walking into this because you keep advancing on these controls, and what's happened is you've ignored that you're becoming a de facto employer. The City Council, Fremont Street experience, some of the casinos. Mr. Jarek, you must know about employer control tests. There's 19 steps in most states. 13 have been reached in this occasion here. We have an employer definable the National Labor Relations Board. We should be sitting down together and working this out. And if we work it out, we can self-police. We can self-regulate without violating the Constitution. And anything that's reasonable and lawful from the city, Fremont Street, as the union president, I can take to the members and get that in writing, and we can get it worked out. We could do an experiment and police ourselves with an organized fashion. If we do this, revenue for everybody can go up. If we work with the casinos, we work with Fremont Street, maybe 30 or 40% from what I estimate. Do some kind of joint marketing plan for tourism to show that we got street performers that are clean, regardless of their talent, because talent is not the threshold for them to be there. The Constitution is. The least of us can be there. We have some very super talented people in this room that have almost an elitist attitude that they have a right to be there compared to a poor performer. We all have the equal rights to be there. Even the panhandler says, "Why lie and need a beer?" Is he in good taste? Is he something I want to see? I have about a half dozen people I wouldn't like to see when I'm performing out there. However, I can't infringe upon their rights because I don't like the way they look. I'm sure there's people that don't like the way I look when I perform. And the thing is, we have to protect the Constitution. I don't want to blame you guys. I don't want to make it personal. But the Santa Monica Venice Beach thing is an attack on the heart of the United States of America and our Constitution. Once you start unraveling our constitutional rights, it spreads to other cities. And that powerful forces, money forces, will utilize that to limit the union speech. The other union brother that was here, one thing I was disappointed about is he said he didn't care about the street performers. I've been trying to get a meeting with the Central Labor Council to say this can affect you guys. And it can. And I'm not saying you guys have any wrongful intent. I know Coffin has said some very inflammatory things here. And I wish Bob would meet with us and try to see that we have a human face. The young man, Jeff, that spoke in the tank top, that's the heart of it. He's going to be homeless. He's going to be out of work and everything else. If this thing is passed the way it is, 120 people are gone overnight. They will lose their means of income and means to support themselves. And the only way we can remedy this is with collective action and sitting down with open minds and open hearts to protect the Constitution for all of us. I will make myself available any time or day or night to meet over this. You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Thank you. We have two more speakers, and then Brad and I will go ahead and conclude. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Adam Flowers. I'm a street performer on Fremont Street. I've been out there for almost 6 years now. And I appreciate everybody that's come up and said something before me. I've gotten a lot out of everything that you guys have said. I, like some of you, have stood out there on the street performing and watched the street change over the past 6 years. When I first showed up out there and the first ordinance was passed back in 2011, it allowed us to bring amplifiers out there to do our acts more effectively. There were performers that would walk up and down the street, characters, great impersonators, and I've watched that change. Seems as if the limits have been pushed more and more, which is everybody's constitutional right. It's their First Amendment right to express themselves the way they want to, whether they want to wear a diaper or they want to wear a banana hammock. But everybody has that opportunity and then that right in the country. If you can walk down Maryland Parkway in a diaper, why can't you walk down Fremont Street in a diaper? The only thing I don't understand is if you walk down Maryland Parkway in a diaper, stand in front of Denny's, somebody's going to call the police. And the nice policeman's going to come up and ask you, what are you doing out here in a diaper? Maybe we ought to have you checked out. Or maybe you ought to head down to Fremont Street, because that's where everybody does that. I don't understand why that is. So a couple of years ago, I started an organization, Street Performers and Artists of Nevada, and opened up membership to street performers. We set down a value system and a mission statement that we wanted to uplift the public's perception of street performers. We wanted to present ourselves in a cleanly fashion. We didn't want to do things like harass tourists. Some things that the city, the government can't enforce, like cleanliness. I mean, everybody can go out there and you don't have to take a shower to live in this country. But to be a member of the organization, the Street Performers and Artists of Nevada, SPAN, you have to do that to be a member. So we started that and retained Alan Lichtenstein as our attorney, and we want to thank the council, the city attorney, the ACLU, and Fremont Street Experience people for sitting down with us and listening to our concerns and putting this new ordinance together. We've pushed ideas back and forth across the table as to how this could work. As a matter of fact, the idea to form SPAN came from Metro. We sat down with, at the time it was Captain Anderson, downtown Metro Command, and he suggested to us that we ought to start something up and talk to our councilmen and let our concerns be known. And in the past year, Captain Walsh has reached out to us, and we've actually sat through See Something, Say Something seminars down at Metro Command to be part of the community, to give back a little bit to the community, do what we can do to work together. There's a few things in the ordinance, the current ordinance, that we would like to talk about. The specified time frame, 1168-020, if it's every odd hour on the hour, should be between 3 p.m. and 1 a.m., not 2 a.m., or 3 p.m. to 3 a.m., but 3 to 1 doesn't, or 3 to, actually it's 3 till 2, so 3 to 1 would work. Sealed lead acid batteries. There's people out there that have amplification, and we understand, and you guys forwarded to us the fire department's code, what they're looking for. And we understand that marine car batteries can be a fire hazard. Also signal cables like microphone cords. There's singers that have 3 singers with long cords stretched out 10, 12 feet from their equipment that can be tripping hazards. We'd like it to read something different, like any individual or group of car, marine, or similar sealed lead acid batteries, unless integral to the commercially manufactured appliance or amplifier being powered. Power inverters or similar configurations that are not part of a self-contained appliance should not be allowed. External signal cables longer than 2 feet also shouldn't be permitted. There's a fire lane that goes through the center of Fremont Street. It's never been enforced before. We've never been told we can't keep our crowds in it, but the ordinance does read that we're not allowed within 20 feet of the fire lane. We feel that ought to be changed. The 200-foot rule that's currently enforced from the stages, that limits the street performers when those stages are active, which currently in the evenings from 6 p.m. till maybe 1 in the morning, it limits the street performers to about 2 blocks of the 5 blocks of Fremont Street. You guys are crowded into 2 blocks right now. You're all shaking your heads because it's like walking a gauntlet of street performers to the tourists because we're all tight together. This new ordinance is 100 feet from the stages, but by creating these spots, which right now you guys have spots, they're organically created. We've made them. I know where I like to perform. You guys know where you like to stand. By creating these spot systems, we're opening up all 5 blocks of Fremont Street. We're making spots all the way down. If you guys look at the map there, there's a lot of places. One of our members of SPAN went and walked the street last Saturday night, and counted groups and individuals and came up with 35 groups. I'm getting to it, Councilman, for sure. There will be plenty of spots with this ordinance, which brings me to this map. Here you go. I said over to you. We throw the map into Photoshop, and right now I believe there's 36 spots, and with the stages open, there's about 22.
It's
38 and 27. This map right here has 45 spots on it, and they're in accordance with the 6-foot, 40-foot distance separations. With all 3 stages open, there would still be 36 spots on that. So I'd like to take a look at that. The noise level right now for the sound amplification is 103 decibels. Basically, you can be louder from 1 a.m. until 3 p.m., but from 3 p.m. until 1 a.m., when it's loud on the street and the ambient noise is loud, we have to be quieter. We'd like that reversed. We'd like that to be different. Louder when it's louder out on the street. We also would like, if Fremont Street decides to employ street performers, that they were to abide to the same regulations that all the other street performers have to abide to. Kiosks also have to abide to the sound levels. And the Fremont Street experience closes the pedestrian mall sometimes. New Year's Eve, maybe NASCAR comes to town and they spread NASCARs out on the street and sometimes cover up the areas that we work. I'll wrap it up. We'd like to limit that to so many days a year, whether it's 12 days a year, 18 days a year, and give us notice, at least 30 days notice, so that we have time to rearrange our lives. And also the sound decibel levels that we're allowed to be should apply to Fremont Street, except during celestial light shows and directly in front of stages that are active. And last but not least here, the spot system. As far as the rotation, it's not a rotation, but it's a reservations. It's a first come, first serve. But we'd like to have something in the ordinance that really specifies you can't reserve, you can't hold, barter, trade, sell, buy spots from other performers, so that we don't have that type of thing going on Fremont Street. So people, they get there and it's fair. So if you want to, and any of you are interested in joining SPAN, our site is vegasstreetperformer.com. You can read more about what we do, and there's a membership application on the site. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Alan Lichtenstein. I am not a street performer. I have been accused of impersonating a lawyer on occasion, but I just want to be very brief about this. When we first talked about this particular possibility well over a year ago, talked about some of the issues, what has been proposed right now, what is sitting there right now, we both know won't work. There's things that were even agreed to in terms of language that somehow didn't find their way in there. It needs a fair amount of work. Part of it is, and part, in terms of the constitutionality, well, indulge me for a second. Part of the problem really is that this was built on a model that no longer applies because it wasn't supposed to be a public forum. It was supposed to be more like the Chicago Pier, where it's something that can be controlled. We went through enough court decisions, so now you've got Fremont Street Limited Liability Company, Experience Limited Liability Company, actually competing with these people. These people have the constitutional right to be out there. Fremont Street has a contract. And so what's going to be necessary, if anything is going to work, is one where everyone's going to have to be giving a little bit, including that company. And I don't think that's hit yet, that they can't do what they want. They can't have their people out there as having a special status. The courts won't go for that, and I think you're aware of that, Brad. In terms of just the general, I mean, besides the tinkering with the language, which will absolutely be necessary, otherwise it's not going to go anywhere. I would hope that within the meetings that go forward, some of that can be done. But one fundamental question is going to be, and I don't know the answer to it, I'm not sure anyone else does either. Someone had mentioned intermediate scrutiny and is there enough available alternate means of communication. With the number of people and the number of communications and the number of spots, if it turns out that too many people will be precluded from too much in the way of their ability to speak, forget about earning a living because that's not part of it, but just their ability for their way to speak. So now maybe they can get 1 hour a week or something like that. And that's shown at an evidentiary hearing. My guess is the whole thing will fall apart. So that's something that really needs to be looked at. Is this practical in terms of the volume? Because as everyone else has said, good performers, bad performers, panhandlers, or whatever, under the Constitution, they have the same right. And if it's curtailed too much, somewhat can be okay, but if it ends up being curtailed too much, the whole house of cards will fall apart. So I would just suggest not rushing into this. I know that there's a lot of push for that, but really look at doing something that won't get thrown out by the court. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, let me thank you, first of all, for coming. Can I make a couple of observations? One, I owe some of you an answer to your questions. Mr. Lichtenstein, I invite you, as I've invited you before, and I thank you for all your input. If you have written suggestions, send them to us. That has been an open invitation from day one. It continues to be one now. If you see parts of the ordinance that you discover after you leave here, that may need correction. I will concede the hours. When we moved it from every hour on the hour to every 2 hours, we did not make that adjustment. That needs to be corrected. When it comes to batteries, Mr. Flowers, I understand your position. We'll work that language out for you because I think you know what we're trying to accomplish here. We want to keep unsafe type of batteries out that explode or could leak or things like that if they're integral to your equipment or part of it, and don't do that. I'm sure we can work that language out. But before we go any further, I just want to ask for a show of hands. How many of you currently belong to Street Performers or Artists of Nevada? I'm sorry? Okay. Maybe I could ask it a different way. How many of you currently consider yourselves part of an organization, union or not? Do you communicate with the other, even in an informal manner? Okay. And the reason I'm asking is because, please put yourself on our shoes for just a moment. You can only know what you know. And in the case of street performers, those of you who are very interested in this ordinance are here today. There are many who are not. There are many who do not consider themselves part of an organization, nor do they want to be part of an organization. I've had street performers come to me and say, I'm professional. I make my own costume. I hold myself out as a professional, and I'm performing next to the guy who goes to Walmart and buys a Spider-Man costume who scares people away. As you've heard today, when people make observations about the First Amendment, it doesn't exist to protect most of you from speech that people agree with. It exists to protect people from speech they don't agree with. And those are the people that have been referred to here today as distasteful or obscene or pornographic. As much as we can all probably agree that they do not enhance the Fremont Street performance environment, and for those of you who make balloon animals or perform exclusively for kids in Disney character costumes or something like that, it certainly is not going to enhance that. The First Amendment protects them almost more than it protects the rest of us because it's their speech that comes under attack more than ours. And that's why we have a very, very difficult time crafting these kinds of ordinances. Because to deal with people who as a group want to work together toward an organization and toward a scheme, which we would love to be able to say, Mr. Moore, to any of you, please come to us as a group and tell us how you prefer to organize this in a way that solves the problem without doing any more than just solving the problem. We'd be right there right now. But that group doesn't exist. Please.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It gets a little emotional for me, too. I'm being involved in this. Is there an independent, mutually agreeable third party that we could demonstrate a card check to where we show that we represent a majority of the performers on Fremont Street?
We could arrange something like that.
Yeah, I would be willing to put the cards down. They see it in camera. Nobody knows the identity.
Please give me a moment, because we listen to all of you, and I'm trying to tie this all together in a way that moves us forward. A friend of mine told me a long time ago something that I really believe. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. We are here to achieve a good thing. We wouldn't have invited you to this meeting unless we wanted to achieve it together. There is no perfect solution, and we know that. We are not going into this blind thinking that a performance zone, whether it's an hour or 2 hours or none at all, is going to solve something completely. But it might solve a lot. I don't know. That's why we want to hear from you. We don't know that we picked the hours right. We don't know that we picked a lot of things right. That's why we want your input. But at the end of the day, please don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, because what we're trying to achieve here is a better environment for all of us. Let me go to some of the comments. And first of all, to the pirates, for want of a better term, I really respect your presentation. We are obviously aware that First Amendment has virtually no limitations, but it's not unlimited. We all know you can't scream fire in a crowded movie house. That speech is not protected. You can't go to a bank and say, I'm here to rob you, and then say that note's protected by First Amendment. You can't utter fighting words that are protected by the First Amendment. And even if you don't fall under those categories, you can do limited time, place, and manner restrictions, but only if they're the least restrictive possible and you've tried other alternatives. I've been doing this job for 23 years now. We have had about 4 different ordinances on the books, and each one over time has revealed a defect. And the current defect, and to be perfectly blunt, is that this one is virtually unenforceable. Performers don't know where they can be all the time. There seems to be bunching and crowding from time to time. Forget about the observations about people that you consider to be distasteful and the like. Even amongst the most talented of you, there are competition for spaces, and there's confusion in the mall. And that is something we're trying to relieve. There will be no solution from today's meeting. It's a dialogue, and I want it to be a continuing dialogue. And if any of you want to meet with me after the meeting, I'll be glad to stay with you as long as you want to stay, and I'll be glad to listen to you. Let me state a couple of other things real quick. I made a lot of notes here, and I just want to see if I cover the most important of them. First of all, fire lane down the middle. I do want to make a correction there. That is not a fire lane down the middle. It is where the fire department will drive a truck if necessary. It is not an official fire lane, so distance separations do not apply to that meandering S-shaped thing through the middle of the mall. I'll state that on the record. That won't ever be enforced as a fire lane, but all the other distances will. Let me ask another couple of questions if I could. I think I know what the answer is going to be to this, but let me tell you that when we started with performance zones, we don't care what the number is, as long as it's the maximum number possible. So if, Mr. Flowers, if you manage to find a way to put 45 out there instead of 38, we're all for you. That's not an issue. If you can get 50 out there, given the rules, away from doorways, away from kiosks, 40 feet from each other, as many as you can possibly get out there, if you're more clever than we are, all the more power to you. We're for that. Having said that, and we've got these performance zones, how many of you are in favor of a performance zone in some form? Forget about hours for a moment and forget about size for a moment, but a performance zone, period. Could I have a show of hands who would support it first? And how many would be against it? A performance zone of any sort. The question is, forget about how many performance zones. Let's assume we maximize them all, have as many out there as we can possibly have, given that they'll be 40 feet apart and away from doorways and kiosks and the like. How many are in favor of some form of performance zone? Forget about the details for a moment, whether it's an hour or 2 hours that you rotate or you stay there all night in one performance zone. How many would be in favor of some type of performance zone in the mall? How many would be against? Okay. Let me ask the next question. if we are going to have a performance zone, and again, we don't really care about how long you're in a zone. Mr. Flowers will tell you, we started with 1 hour. When Mr. Flowers said we might have to pack up a lot of equipment and move it, we changed it to 2 hours. We don't have an issue with the hours as long as there's equal opportunity if there's going to be a rotation. So that's the next question. How many of you favor a time limit of some sort, forget about the number, for how long you occupy a performance zone? I would just like to see. I see no hands. So how many favor no time limit if you're in a performance zone? That's everyone. Okay. You know, with that vote come monopolization of a zone and only a fixed number of people. If we went with that, and there were only 45 zones, only 45 people would be able to perform every night. Okay? Okay, let's get to that. We're going to break this down a bit at a time. Okay, I've got a feel for where you stand on the zones and the time limits and things like that. Let me ask them, please let me, I give you your chance, please give me mine, and I'll stick around at the end to listen to you. But I'm trying to survey you a little bit right now to know where you stand. With respect to the registration system that was described, and I'll be glad to go through it again if you need me to, how many of you favor some form of registration system? This is free. This is not given to other people to do background checks on you or anything like that. Everything I described at the beginning. Some form of registration system. Okay? Against any form of registration system. Permit system. Taking it beyond registration, you'd actually need a permit that would be permission, a fee, and the like to perform. A permit system. And I gather the rest of you are no permit. Okay. Those are my questions. Again, we're in the middle of this process. We wanted to put something in front of you that you could see what our goal is. Again, we are not interested in doing anything more than helping make this environment safer for everybody. I can tell you right now, Mayor Goodman had to leave. If you want to talk about the input that we receive, and believe it or not, I've received letters complimenting several of you on your performances, and they say, we love to come down because we love this performer, we love this, we love this. But about 95% of the things that I get that are forwarded to me through the council, Councilman Barlow's office, who represents half the street, through the mayor's office, are letters dealing with the environment downtown, how they don't feel safe, how they're not coming back to Fremont Street ever again, how they'll never bring a child down here ever again. I'm not directing this criticism at you. I'm just telling you that what we get and what we're trying to respond to, and how they want us to do something to clean it up. And as you know, there is nothing that can be done about individuals that people consider distasteful. Distasteful's not against the law. Pornographics, not against the law. Obscene is against the law. And it's got a very specific definition. And in the case of individuals who wear pasties, according to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, they are well within their rights, and there's no legislation this council could enact to stop it. That is just a fact of life. And so there are other things we could discuss, at length as well. Mr. Moore? I don't know that we're looking at the same numbers. Right now downtown there are 2 hotels that don't have any rooms open, and they were open a few years ago. I'm not saying it's a direct result of street performers or anything like that, but I'm saying the environment downtown is declining. That is a fact of life. That is a reality we all have to deal with. And that has other consequences for all of us, but I'm not going to go there. Go ahead.
The other night I watched 4 fist fights during my time out on Fremont Street, all between tourists that are overly intoxicated. I think I've witnessed 1 altercation with the Kiss guys in Tupac where a man was arrested for having a traffic warrant involved. Nobody among us is fist fighting, and that does come from the street performers. I've been attacked about 4 times in 3 years between here and the Strip. I can defend myself so it doesn't bother me. However, if the police were there, they can enforce existing laws to remove these people, drunk in public, assault and battery, aggressive panhandling, whatever it may be. We need to enforce the existing laws, and all of us are an army that can work with Metro to get right on the phone and get them out there. We're an asset.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Let me just wrap this up today by saying thank you for coming down. I have, again, this has been recorded, so I'm going to take the comments and I'm going to kind of break them out. If you want to meet with me individually, I will stay here as long as you need. I'll stay here till midnight if you want me to. By the way, I was pretty much raised on Fremont Street. My father back a long time ago had a business on Fremont Street, and that's where I lived most of my childhood. So I can appreciate the environment, and I've seen the changes down there. Councilman Barlow grew up here. He's seen this from the time he was an infant. Councilman Beers, who was here a moment ago, also grew up here. This council cares passionately for this downtown, and not just for the businesses, but for the entire environment. We want to see it become a place that people want to come. You want the same thing. You'll make a lot more. You'll attract a lot more people. You'll be a lot more successful if this works. And so believe me, that is our only goal here, and our minds are open. And again, I don't vote. I'm just trying to get some consensus as best we can to bring to the City Council on September 2nd. If you think we need another meeting, I'll be glad to sponsor it. Again, we'll probably have it here in the council chambers, and if you want to limit the issues to a few that you think, that's fine. I also invite you to take the draft that we handed out today and mark it any way you want. There's no pride of authorship here. If you think of some ideas we haven't, I'm not saying they're going to be adopted. I'm not saying we're all going to agree at the end of the day. But I want you to have a chance to take a look at it. And if you can make this better, we're with you. So with that, I want to say thank you for coming. I'm sorry, Mr. Wilkerson? Everything right now is scheduled for September 2nd. That's a regularly scheduled meeting of the City Council. They'll meet here in this chambers. Normally, there's a recommending committee that considers an ordinance the day before the council votes. That's not going to happen in this case. Rather than have 3 people consider it, this is going to the entire council, which will sit as the recommending committee. So rather than have 3 people give their feedback to 7 people, all 7 people are going to hear it as a recommending committee and then vote on it. Yes. I understand. I will pass it on to the sponsors. Councilman Barrow is a sponsor. Councilman Coffin is a sponsor. Again, keep in mind, we've been working on this for a long time, and we don't want to drop this on you at the last second. But at the same time, I'm just the attorney for the place, so I will pass your suggestion on to the council members, and we're here as long as you need us. I understand. I will pass it on. In the meantime, my invitation is still, please, if you want to stay afterwards, I want to thank you all for coming. Again, we have validation up here if you need it. Thanks again.